Some of you may have noticed that empathy is something that seems to be dwindling away a bit. Now, we are getting thick-skinned, regularly failing to tune into other people's emotions and feelings. And the irony is that we don't even feel bad after doing this. Why? Because a lot of us are becoming self-centered and have no time for people. However, our brain is made to be empathetic. We have neurons in the brain called mirror neurons, and these neurons are made to connect your brain with the brain of the people you are observing. Suppose when you see a person vomiting, you feel nauseous, because your mind mirrors the person and registers their sensation within you. But we often are not present in the moment, and due to this, the mirroring fails to happen. This means in today's fast-paced times, we are either not interested in other people, don't try to notice them, or we lack mindfulness. And most of the actions are on autopilot. Research at the University of Michigan today found students scored 40% lower on a measure of empathy than their elders in the 1980s and 1990s. Coming up, I'm going to be giving you tips on how to become more empathetic. What is going on, guys? Richard Rosa with the Personal Development Channel. Welcome to the community. Later in this episode, I'm going to be sharing 4 tips to help you improve your empathy. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. And if at any point you like what you see, please give it a little like. Let's get to it then. Empathy is a word that is used often by many people. It's commonly known that empathy is a good thing to have, but it isn't always a priority in people's lives. While a large majority of the population is capable of empathy, sometimes the practice of it is limited. But what is empathy and why is it important? Can empathy be developed, or are we born with a certain amount? Are some people just naturally better at empathizing? Is it really as important as some people say it is to practice empathy? So let's start with what empathy actually is. In simple terms, empathy is the ability to understand things from another person's perspective. It's the ability to share someone's feelings and emotions and understand why they're having those feelings. Many famous people have talked about the importance of understanding and empathy. Maya Angelou once said, "I think we all have empathy. We may not have enough courage to display it." Albert Einstein said, "Peace cannot be kept by force. It can only be achieved by understanding." Former President Barack Obama has said the biggest deficit that we have in our society and in the world right now is an empathy deficit. We are in need of people being able to stand in somebody else's shoes and see the world through their eyes. So in an attempt to define what empathy is, people have created different categories of empathy. According to psychologists Daniel Goleman and Paul Ekman, there are 3 types of empathy: cognitive, emotional, and compassionate. So cognitive empathy, which is the ability to understand how someone else feels and to work out what they might be thinking. And then you've got emotional empathy, or affective empathy. Now this refers to the ability to share another person's emotions. This would mean when you see someone else who is sad, it makes you feel sad. And then finally, you've got compassionate empathy, or empathetic concern, which is when you take feelings to actions. It goes beyond understanding and relating to other people's situations and pushed an individual to do something. So why is empathy important? Now, empathy is important in almost every aspect of daily life. It allows us to have compassion for others, relate to friends, loved ones, co-workers and strangers, and it has a large benefit and impact to the world. How does empathy help in personal life? Well, healthy relationships require nurture, care and understanding. A friendship or romantic relationship that lacks empathy and understanding will soon struggle. When people only think of their own interests, the other people in the relationships will suffer. If one spouse in a marriage forgoes seeing things from the other's perspective, they will likely have some issues. No two people are ever going to think exactly alike, and no two people are going to have the same experiences, but people in relationships bring their own ideas, life experiences and struggles. Without taking the time to try to relate to another's feelings and perspectives, relationships will start to feel unloved and uncared for. And then what about if we talk about empathy in the workplace? For many people, a workplace is a place for teamwork, for things that require a group effort. It's extremely important to take the time to relate to co-workers. Even if people are not specifically working on one project, it is still important to get along with fellow workers. Using empathy is a vital part of a smooth working relationship. Without it, it's much easier to fall into disputes and disagreements. And it's also highly important for management to use empathy. Bosses who lack empathy are likely to subject their employees to unfair practices. Managers who have little empathy push employees to work beyond what is healthy and reasonable, or may be unduly harsh when an employee makes a mistake. Higher amounts of empathy in the workplace have actually been linked to increased performance, increased sales, and better leadership abilities. And then how does it help on a wider scale? Well, a global perspective is infinitely important, because especially when it leads to compassion. This type of empathy pushes people to dive in and help when there are major disasters. People are willing to help out others and they have never met them, because they know that they would too need the same thing. Without compassionate empathy, the world would be a much darker and less functional place to live. And I know it's not perfect and there's shitloads of dark out there, but it would probably be a lot worse if there was none of it. Now, while there is some evidence that the ability to empathise is traced to genetic tendency, it's also true that empathy is a skill that can be increased or decreased. So one of the most effective ways for someone to become empathetic is for them to be trained as children. Empathy is a part of education known as emotional intelligence. Teaching children to think of the way that other people feel is a good way of helping them develop empathy. If a child hurts another child or teases them, it's helpful to ask the child how that made them feel and how they'd feel if it was done to them. Like, would you like to be teased or hurt? Would they be sad or angry if someone had treated them poorly? This line of thought can also be used for positive things. For example, sharing is an important part of a young child's education. Children are often taught to share because they like it when others share with them. It's easy to teach children to treat others with kindness because they too would like to be treated kindly. And while it is easier to train a person from childhood to be empathetic, it is also possible for adults to increase their levels of empathy. And while it is easier to train a person from childhood to be empathetic, it is also possible for adults to increase their levels of empathy. Which brings me on to ways in which you can do this. You can be in the moment. Not just be in a place, but be in the moment. Practice mindfulness and observe what's happening with the people around you. Once you get your consciousness back, your mirror neurons will come to action and you'll start mirroring the mind of the person in front of you. Suppose you're going back to work after work on a bus. Remove your headphones and stop pretending to be on your phone. Instead, consciously observe around you for 30 minutes or less. You will notice a lot of people plus lots of emotions. Getting rid of that mindfulness can serve as a first step towards developing empathy. Talk to people. Start by finding a person who has perceived an emotion similar to you. Talk to him or her and see how he overcame it. Let's see if you can feel that person. The chances are high that you will, because you've gone through a similar thing or feelings. So it's easy to relate to. Then proceed with talking with other people's experiences and issues you've not experienced. Now feel what it is like to walk in their shoes. You'll start to gradually start feeling empathy towards them. Be curious. Curiousness is more than knowing who is engaged to whom. XYZ is having a girl or a boy and who is dating whom. We can learn to empathise when we stop judging people on our assumptions and dig a bit deeper to understand what is happening with them. Explore the heart of the other person. Drift your attitude from I know what's going on when you don't actually know to what is actually going on. Try to replace your judgmental statements with questions. Ask what they are experiencing and how can you help. And then we've got read fiction. Now, believe it or not, reading fiction can actually increase your empathy. New studies show that when people read fiction, their brains really feel like they're entering a new world. For example, researchers from the University of Buffalo studied participants who have read Twilight and Harry Potter. What they discovered is that people self-identified as vampires and wizards, respectively. The reason this discovery matters is because it shows that people are able to identify with people and groups that are actually outside of themselves. To put this into a non-fantasy application, it shows that people can relate to people who live in lives that are entirely different to their own. For example, people from the United States could read a book about a person in China and learn to identify with someone on the other side of the planet. Okay, so it's challenge time then, guys. As I mentioned earlier, start by finding a person who has perceived an emotion similar to you. Talk to them and see how they overcame it. Let's see if you feel that person or not. The chances are high, like I said earlier, that you will, because you have also gone through the same feelings and it'll be easy to relate to. Then what you want to do is start proceeding with talking to other people's experiences and issues and see if you can relate to them. Keep practicing this to improve your empathy. Share your challenge experience with us in the YouTube comments or tag us on Instagram using @RosaMindset. That's it for today, everyone. Hit that subscribe button if you enjoyed the content and give it a little like if you liked it. And if you want to be notified of any of the new episodes, then click the little notification. And finally, come and join our community on Instagram or Facebook. All the links are going to be in the description below. This has been Richard Rosa. Peace out.